Right, so if you'd like to come onto your back this evening to start the practice, come into your constructive rest pose or semi-supine and ease down onto your spine. And give yourself an opportunity to arrive physically, mentally, energetically to your space, to your mat to start the practice. And I'll just let Ella in. So coming onto your mat, and giving yourself the opportunity to notice how it feels for the body to breathe without trying to change anything. So just allowing for the breath to move in freely from the external, from the outer, coming into the inner experience, coming into a natural breath. So breathing here into natural breath and exploring how that feels. So we're simply noticing breathing in and breathing out. And the way to practice with the breath today is not to do anything with it. So often in our yoga practice, we're manipulating the breath. At the moment, this evening, I'd just like you to observe the breath. It doesn't matter whether it's fast or slow, superficial or deep, laboured or relaxed, pleasant or unpleasant. In no way do we try to manipulate, alter or change it. We simply note it as part of the developing experience of our body in this semi-supine posture and leave it completely alone. Leave it in its own place. Now, interestingly, tonight's session is very much based around the fluidity of the body, whether that's in the breath, within the movement, and the in one's own place is Svadhisthana, which is the energy center around the pelvis, which is connected with water. So perhaps you sense the breath arriving in your lower belly. So we're looking at the region below the navel, in between the perineum and the navel, somewhere in between. And you might sense the breath arriving and moving almost imperceptibly up your central channel. Breathing here. When we do leave the breath as is in its own place, a process of discovery can begin to unfold. In being with our breath, attending to it, but not interfering or meddling with its natural process, we begin to develop a conscious and ever-deepening relationship with the inner breath, of which the outer breath is the outer shell. As our practice of pure awareness deepens and evolves, our attention will naturally reside much more within the inner breath, and that subtle breath will become an essential guide. And as you observe the body breathing, I'd like you to begin to circle around the base of the pelvis in your semi-supine position. So if you'd like to widen your feet to create a wider base of support, that can help. And allow for the knees as you roll to drop over to one side and the other side. So you're familiar with a pelvic tilt. With this pelvic roll, these circles, you allow for that fluidity to move up into the legs. Maybe the heels lift off the ground. And you're rolling to create circles around the sacrum, the back of the pelvis. And then rolling around in the opposite direction, allowing for the knees to move. And this sense of fluidity. Not changing or manipulating the breath in any way. It may automatically become more of a nasal breath without necessarily controlling it. Now we're going to take the knees and allow them to drop over to the left side. And then we're going to roll over to the other side and drop the knees to the right side. rolling onto the back of the buttocks, rolling over to one side, and then rolling over to the other side. And then taking the feet and the knees up to the midline, we begin to find our 2-foot support, rolling up through each vertebra of the spine, perhaps taking it all the way up into the clavicular, the upper spine, and then rolling all the way back down through those vertebrae, one by one, finding a space in between. I'm going to take this action into the arms. The next time you lift and receive that flowing wave up through the spine, bring the arms up overhead. Maybe they come all the way over, maybe not. And gently flow freely through all of the vertebrae as you settle on down. We're going to do this 3 times, flowing and exploring how it is to roll up through the spine with the arms moving overhead. And without potentially controlling that length of the inhalation, the exhalation, just notice what the breath begins to do quite naturally in response. Feeling each of those vertebrae as they lift. Seeing if you can cultivate a sense of fluid movement here. And the next time you drape yourself down, you can bring the gaze up as you flatten the lumbar against the floor. And then bring the back of the head down. So we're going to come into a position with the shins parallel, the knees directly over the hip points, and the arms come up towards the ceiling. You may want to lengthen up through the arms and draw the shoulder blades down to feel that sense of openness in the shoulders. Now we're going to spiral through the ankles firstly, rotating in one direction and rotating in the opposite direction. And then doing the same thing, we're going to spiral through the wrists, one direction, and then coming back through in the opposite direction. And then we're going to spiral in the same direction, both feet, both hands, and then come back in the opposite direction. Lovely. We're then going to hold in flexion the left side, left hand, left foot, spiral through the right in one direction, spiral through the right in the opposing direction. Hold that inflection, come to the left side, spiraling through the wrist and the ankle, and then spiraling through the wrist and the ankle the other direction. We're then going to spiral through the right hand and the left foot in one direction, and then back in the opposite direction. And adjust the knees if you're finding they're coming in. Obviously, if you've got any herniation or pulling here or you're postnatal, you might want to keep the knees in slightly. And then we're going to come over to the left hand and the right foot for a circle, and then come back in the opposite direction. Lovely. Now let's see if we can spiral the right hand in one direction and then spiral the left foot in the opposing direction. Okay, this is really tricky. Can you achieve that? And then we're going to come to the left side, left hand, right foot. Can you spiral them in opposite directions? So the hand might be going clockwise and the foot might be going anti-clockwise. It's really tricky. This is like brain training. Lovely. And then release. Now we're going to take a somatic roll like a dead bug, widening the knees and the arms, and allow for yourself to roll over to the side. But there's a sense of stability and control, and you don't collapse over to the side. Before that happens, you find that width, that girdle, that stability before you come over to the other side. So you've got this lovely dead bug rolling, and you can explore drawing the knees away from the abdomen if you want to make this more challenging around the midline. And indeed, you can bring the hands and the knees together to see how that changes things. Now, the next time you roll into your neutral, we're going to drop the knees over to the left and the arms come over to the right. Gaze follows the hands. And then drawing in through the midline, the hands come over to the left, the legs come over to the right. So you've got this little rotation coming about. Coming to the other side, this time you will allow the gaze to follow the knees as the arms drop over to the side. And then drawing the knees over to the right hand side, the gaze follows. So you're switching this up slightly. And then just feeling into this for a moment. See if you can create more rotation here with more support. And then coming over to the other side to be fairly symmetrical. Lovely. And then rolling up. Draw those knees in and drop them out to the outer reaches. Happy baby. So you might want to bring the hands to the back of the knees or bringing the hands to the tops of the feet. And perhaps creating some circles within the pelvis here. You might want to make this into an infinity sign as you spiral into the hips. How is that? How does that feel? And then we're going to fold the left foot in towards the groin and roll the right foot over towards the floor. And then spiral over to the other side, folding the right foot in towards the groin. Bring the left foot down to the floor. Now, it's always really interesting doing this in class because people's approach is so different. So can you see if you can feel into this rather than overthink it? How much space is there within your hips to roll here? And then coming up through the midline, we're going to rock and roll 3 times along the spine. Come up into a seated position. And in terms of the padding that you use today, you might want to use a meditation cushion or a blanket. Find your sit bones and then cross the legs in the opposing direction to where you would normally come to. We're going to inhale the arms up overhead and exhale the arms down. The next time we inhale the arms up overhead, see if you can hold the mind with the hands as you track the gaze up towards the ceiling. And we're going to drop the left hand down onto the ground here, keeping those sit bones grounded, lifting up through that middle finger. So you're nice and long to cultivate that lateral extension. Leaning over to the side, feeling that length from the right sit bone up to the right armpit. The gaze follows up towards the ceiling. Now we're going to swoop that arm round to feel into some windmills into the shoulder girdle here. And you might want to take this action as wide as you possibly can to feel into the outer reaches of your shoulder mobility. And notice where the movement comes in. So you might feel that sense of yawning open around the armpit, the serratus anterior. You might feel some rotation. You might feel it into the QL. And then as you come forwards, let's come back in the opposite direction. So feeling into the outermost reaches of your shoulder mobility. Lovely, sweeping that arm forwards and then reaching up towards the ceiling. You might feel the arm drawing out the shoulder socket and then let the arm sink down into the shoulder socket. So there's a palpable difference here. There's quite a lot going on in the shoulders. You can have this sense of moving out and drawing back in. With your next inhalation, we're going to draw up as though there's a rope above us and drop the hand. Inhaling, moving the arms up over head. Exhaling, dropping the right hand down towards the side of the mat and reaching. So you've got your sit bone drawing down with a sense of lengthening along the side seam of the body, the intercostal muscles. Breathing here, maybe the space to gaze up towards the ceiling. And let's reach forwards as we draw the arm down and bring it back. So around the back line of the body, the dorsal side of the body. Letting the gaze follow. And as you come forwards, let's bring that hand around the back line, really over experiencing the windmill. So it's not a conservative windmill action. And then drawing that hand up towards the ceiling, almost pulling as though there's a rope to draw yourself out. Now we'll take the legs out into the middle front, into a V shape now, spiraling the toes up towards the ceiling. Make sure the sit bones are rooted and the spine is nice and tall. Now just acknowledge the back line of the body with the hands. So you're nice and tall through the spine. We're going to clasp the hands together and begin to grist the mill, Ramdas style, keeping the elbows nice and straight and allowing for this action to come in like your pestle and mortar, and you're stirring your cauldron. What are you cultivating in your cauldron today? Are you stirring maybe some sage tea? And then come back in the opposite direction. Drawing the spine back and bringing the breastbone forwards. Really thinking about your feet here, so your toes are extending up towards the ceiling. And then coming back through the middle, we're going to come forwards as though you're rowing and draw yourself backwards. Coming forwards and coming into your midline. So we're now going to bend the right leg so the foot sits to the inside of the leg. And stroking the back of the hand alongside the straightened leg, we're going to reach up towards the ceiling. Again, a lateral extension movement, looking up towards the hand, the palms wide. Now, as you feel into the shoulder here, can you drop the arm bone down into the shoulder girdle? How does that change things? Can you drop the weight of the head before bringing the arm all the way over into a C shape? And then allowing for that hand to come forwards. We windmill the arm all the way around. Once, coming back in the opposite direction. Maybe skimming the toes with the hand before bringing the arm up. And then dropping the back of the hand towards the tailbone. Gazing up towards the ceiling if the neck will allow for it. Breathing here before drawing up with the hand and pulling through that imaginary rope to come into an upright position. Now we're rotating now to bring the left hand behind the buttock and the right hand comes to the left side of that straightened foot. Coming into a rotation here. Noticing where you feel this movement. Noticing where you feel the breath. And maybe you can bring that left hand back even more. Before releasing, and as we release, we're going to come into a forward fold with the breastbone focusing towards the little toe. So it's a bit like a Janusarasana, but the pelvis isn't as square perhaps. And you're thinking about lovely long length through the spine before you allow for this sense of settling and folding to take place over the shin and the knee. Coming into a forward fold, and it may be the case that as you rest here that the forehead drapes down towards the knee, the shin, and you allow for a curve to come in. Spreading through the toes reach up towards the ceiling. Breathing in. Before coming back through your straightened spine, padding up through the hands and acknowledging that little rotation one more time, bringing the right hand to the outside of the leg, the left hand to the buttock. Gazing down by the side of you and then draping yourself through, clocking yourself over. We're now bringing the right hand behind the buttock. And we're going to press down, pointing through the toes here and lift up towards the sky, allowing for the arm to come all the way overhead. And then bringing that buttock back down. Come into your little Janusarasana, forward fold. And then bring that hand back towards the buttock, lifting back up into your little wild thing. Breathing up towards the sky, feeling into that space created and rolling onto the heel. to come back down and through. So we're now going to lengthen through the right leg. The left leg comes in towards the groin, spreading through the toes. The toes are so key here, before stroking the back of the right hand down through the inline of the foot and lifting up through the arm, opening the palm of the hand, gazing up towards the hand here if the neck feels happy to do so. And then we're going to spiral, so the hands almost coming down towards the toes and stroking through the sand, the imagined sand, of course, and bring the hand back towards the back line before coming back in the opposite direction, allowing for that movement to come in, finding that C shape, gazing up towards the ceiling, and bring the back of the hand to the back of the pelvis to gaze up, if the neck will allow for it. Breathing here. Before exploring that reach up towards the ceiling, the pop that comes out of the shoulder and drawing the shoulder or the arm back into the shoulder blade, and reaching up through that arm to come into our rotation. So the rotation comes in, we spiral the gaze over the straightened leg, spiraling through the toes, left hand comes to behind the buttock. And if it doesn't feel like much of a rotation, take that hand and bring it further back. Breathing here. And then a derotation as we fold over the thigh and the knee, gazing towards that pinky toe, coming into your little Janusarasana, your forward fold, gazing down at your knee, your shin, your thigh, wherever you are, with a straightened spine firstly, and then allow for a sense of surrender to come in. So your spine now can curve, your forehead can feel heavy. It may be the case the forehead comes down to the knee or the shin. Maybe not. Allow that sense of surrender. Breathing here before we draw ourselves up through our straight spine and coming back. Lovely. And then we'll be coming into our little rotation. So we're clocking over that straightened leg to look behind us. Lovely. And then as you draw yourself back through, bring that left hand behind the buttock. Reach, point the toe, reach up and draw yourself up towards the sky, opening up into Wild Thing. And then rolling onto the heel, coming back into your little forward fold. A little bit of flow coming in here, taking that hand back towards the back line of the buttock, reaching as you point the toe, coming into your Wild Thing, before everything gathers back into that position on the ground. Now we're going to take our legs into mermaid now. So you've got one leg in front, another leg comes behind, feeling into the hips. So maybe you can find a roll here. Now with the leg at the front, we need to prepare our rolled up blankets. So get hold of your blanket. We're making a little bolster, a little ledge for ourselves. So as we roll, we're going to come over that front leg. So you'll notice that I'm swiveling with a spiral into that front leg. And the angle of the front leg is going to be very dependent on the external rotation available to you. If you've got lots of external rotation, the shin can come towards the front of the mat. I have to be careful not to overdo it. If you want to decrease that rotation, bring the foot underneath the pelvis. And your rolled up blanket will come in under the pelvis here, with the legs straightened out behind us. Now, in terms of your bolster, we can use the bolster for lovely little support around the front of the torso, coming into your pigeon, but with that extra support. Resting the face down on your bolster if you can, or indeed you could use lots of cushions. Breathing into the space around the hips. Svadhisthana, one's own place, situated around the pelvis. And just noticing the breath here without trying to change or manipulate in any way. And with pigeon, we often think about a dorsiflexion of the foot, but actually within pigeon, we keep the foot very relaxed and kind of floppy. And of course, you want to be considerate of your knees. So where are you feeling it? Do you feel it in the front of the lengthened leg, or do you feel it in the deeper hip flexors of the leg at the front? Breathing here. Before we rewind the film, propping ourselves up through our hands, bring that bolster out and swiveling sideways back into our mermaid. So you can release your little blanket, and you're going to need this on the other side. So as you come into your mermaid, just acknowledge how the hips are. And we're going to come onto the sit bones and swivel the legs to the other side. So is that possible? This is a really good thing to do if your hips are tight. It's always good to get other people to try and do this as well. And we're going to take ourselves over from our mermaid, so the spiraling. We're encouraging this moving in from the side position into our pigeon as we roll over that front leg, bringing our little sausage underneath the pelvis, and then getting hold of our bolster. And indeed, you can have it lengthways, or you can have it like a T at the front to rest. A lovely place, really. Making any adjustments that you need to here. You'll want to feel fairly comfortable. Resting your cheek down on your bolster or whatever support you've created for yourself. And if you're not used to coming into pigeon often, especially if you've never come into pigeon before, it can take a lot of adjustment to try and figure out where the limbs are supposed to go. Take time, make yourselves comfortable. And we'll be here for a moment longer. And then using the hands, removing the bolster, creeping ourselves up and rolling to the side, onto the side hip here, folding that back leg in and coming back into our little mermaid here. So with that sense of swiveling, let's bring the arms out to in front and bring both legs over to the side, and then bring the legs over to the other side. And from this position, we're going to swivel into our tabletop position, spreading the hands nice and wide underneath the shoulders, the hands open, the knees directly under the hip points. And we're going to take a little cat-cow, dropping the head, moving into the space around the spine, the vertebra, coming into a sense of the ebb and the flow of the breath, moving through from the sacrum up towards the top of the head. Coming into your scared cat and into your cow. And then we're going to bring the arms slightly wider now to allow for ourselves to come over the hands and then drop the hips back into child's. And then drawing yourself forwards, let the hips open towards the floor, come into upward facing dog. So the shoulders are directly over the wrists. The neck is nice and long, the chin is tucked in. We're keeping the shoulder blades drawing together. So the strength in the arms here before gathering yourself back into your child's pose. And with a sense of flow, let's bring the hips over to one side, drop them and bring them over to the other side, creating circles with the hips. And you can feel into this. And if you want to take this into a figure of 8, crossing the front of the pelvis over through the midline, scooping the hips back. So you're creating like the infinity sign around the front of the pelvis here. Lovely. And then bringing yourself back into your all fours position, where you're going to take the left knee in and scoop circles into the left hip. And acknowledging whether you're stacking over the hips here, you may want to draw the hip point down, make this more challenging, noticing whether you're lolling over, and then come back in the opposite direction. Drawing circles with the knees, opening up the foot. And dropping the left side, we come over to the right, scooping 3 circles, nice and slow. There is a temptation to speed this up to make it easier. And then coming back in the opposite direction. Spiraling here. Lovely. Now as we drop the leg back down into our tabletop, we're going to extend through the left side. Now we're coming into a side angle here. We're bringing the foot back. We're going to keep a line between the hands, the knee and the foot. The foot is grounded. Push things out of the way. And we bring the arm up towards the ceiling. So we're coming into a side plank. And then as we scoop the hands round into our windmill, allow for the arm to drop back as much as you possibly can. Notice if the breath changes with this action. And then come back in the opposite direction. Moving the face of the gaze with the arm. Find that sense of stability as you bring the arm up and then come up into your gate pose, Parangasana. Finding that stability through the legs. We're going to drop the hand over the knee and the thigh and gaze up towards the hand and the ceiling. We've got this lovely lateral long line here. Breathing here. Before scooping that hand back down, rewinding the film, bringing the left hand down to meet, scooping the foot in and drawing to the other side. So we're going to do the same thing, extending out through the right leg, bringing the left foot around the back line. You've got a flat side of foot on the ground, a line between the knee and the hand, so you can move the hand if necessary. Coming into your side plank, as you scoop the arm all the way around to the back line, the front line, and then coming back in the opposite direction. Feeling into this space available around the shoulders. And then bring that hand back towards the ceiling, find that base of support, and reach and lift up into your gate pose before you spiral that hand up towards the ceiling. Gaze follows. Feeling that space from knee to hip to armpit to middle finger. Breathing here. Before spiraling that hand back down, rewinding the film as it were, bringing the right hand down, bring the foot down, and the other knee to meet. So you come back into your all fours. We're going to tuck the toes under and feel into a cat-cow action from this almost balasana, almost tabletop. Can you feel into an extension and then flow into a flexion? It's really quite tricky when you change the position, but it moves into the shoulders differently. It might move into the spine differently. With those toes tucked under, we're going to spread out through the fingers and come into your downward dog, dropping the head, gazing to the left armpit, the right armpit, giving ourselves a little sniff, finding your downward dog. Now we're going to come into some elephant from this position. If you're feeling strong in the arms, imagining that your nose is like your trunk. Again, we come into circles. This is quite a strong press up action as you bend the elbows and circle through the nose, which is your trunk. Now I'm really into this asana, as it was shown in the Hatha Yoga project at SOAS in London at one of the exhibitions. It was discovered in one of the 11th or 13th century texts. So we're circling. Take this with your own strength today. I discovered through doing elephant, I can do press ups. I've never been able to do press ups in my life. This is really strengthening. And then come back in the opposite direction. Listen to your body. Maybe there's one direction that feels more straightforward than the other. Can you get that nose down towards the ground? And then come back into your downward dog. Find a resting position. Find the ground before lifting up the left leg, three-legged dog. We're then going to stack the hips, bend the knee, drop the foot to behind the buttocks and look under the right armpit. Coming into scorpion. Breathing into that stacking of the hips. Lovely. And then coming back through your three-legged dog. Drop the right foot down, come to three-legged dog on the left side. Pelvis is stable here. Before bending the knee, stack the hips open to the side, drop the foot behind the buttocks, gazing under left armpits. Coming into child's pose at any point if you need to. Lovely. And then bring your foot down into your downward dog. Now we're going to transition to Uttanasana. Depending on your energy, you can pad your feet towards your hands, or you can bunny hop 3 times, or you can come into Uttanasana forward fold by another means. So if you want to bunny hop, you can bunny hop. If you want to bunny hop forwards, you can do that, or you can pad through the feet. Coming into Uttanasana, bending through the knees, so you're sagging, hanging your torso with the head hanging heavy. And we're going to create figure of 8 shapes here as we come up through ragdoll. So there's a sense of fluidity. And we're coming into different side movements with the hips swinging from side to side. Now, as we come up into Tadasana, the last thing to come up is going to be the head. I'm just going to make sure you can see me and I don't cut my head off. Coming into your Tadasana, acknowledge that connection between the feet, the knees, the hips, at the front of the mat. Feeling into that shape. You want to feel nice and rooted through your body. Before we step the left leg back into Virabhadrasana 1. Now find a Virabhadrasana 1 that doesn't feel like you're on a tightrope. So you've got a wide base of support. So you're not like this, you're like this, okay? You're nice and sturdy. And you're swiveling the heel in about 45 degrees. So you've got these hip points that are like headlamps, nice and stable. When we lift up through the arms, you might feel like there's a little bit of a curve within the lumbar. If it feels twingy, draw the tailbone down, okay? Change the position of the pelvis. We can feel into strength around that area by bending the knees and feeling into this Virabhadrasana 1. Is Amanda still there? Yes. Breathing into this Virabhadrasana 1. So we're going to take the breath into a little flow here. So as we inhale, we're going to reach up towards the ceiling. As we exhale, we're going to come into a forward fold. As we inhale, we can reach and lengthen the spine. As we exhale, we're drawing whatever it is that we're swimming through down alongside the body. And then inhaling the arms up and overhead. We're going to do this 3 times. Inhaling, exhaling, inhaling, reaching, exhaling, gathering. Inhale. Exhale, forward. Inhale, reach. Exhale, swimming through, what is it? River weed, mud, air, whatever it is for you today. And inhale. Now we're going to switch up slightly here. So this time as we exhale, we're coming into Virabhadrasana 3. Taking the foot off the ground. Inhale, reach. Exhale, gather. And inhale, drop the foot with a sense of control as you bring the arms up overhead. Inhale, exhale, coming onto that front foot. Inhale, reach. Exhale, gather. Inhale, release. Exhale, coming into that front foot. Inhale, reach. Exhale, receive and release. Finding your Virabhadrasana 1 before you draw in to the front of the mat. Okay, so we're now bringing the right foot up to take that back into Virabhadrasana 1 on the other side. I felt like I was too scrunched up there, so I've taken myself back. Find that sense of ground. Your front knee is bent. The back leg is straight, so you feel the length down through that back leg, lifting up through the arms, making the adjustment that you might need to through the back of the tailbone, grounding that down so you're protecting your lumbar. Inhaling here and exhaling into that forward fold. Inhale, reaching, exhale, gather, inhale, exhale, with full integrity of what this entails. Inhale, exhale, inhale into that upward Virabhadrasana 1. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, reaching. Exhale, swimming the arms back. Right, we're switching it up now. So inhaling, arms up overhead. Exhale, finding that balance. Virabhadrasana 3. Inhale, reach. Exhale, bring the foot back. Inhale. Exhale, flowing between these movements. Virabhadrasana 3. Inhale, reach. Exhale. Inhale, arm overhead. Exhale, Virabhadrasana 3. Little flow here. Inhale, reaching. Exhale, coming back into your Virabhadrasana 1. And drawing yourself to the front into your Tadasana. Notice how that feels energetically. And then bring the legs out to the sides here. Lovely. So a little bit of a bend in the knees. Feeling into the hips. How does it feel to draw yourselves over, bending one knee, bending the other? Now, can you create circles here? Figure of 8 circles maybe, or full circle, to feel into the hips. Not much of an opportunity unless you're a dancer to come into this, and I feel like this is a very Maori-esque place to be. Now, as we feel into the hips, can we explore, and you can move the feet off the ground by all means, how it is to come down into this bent knee, straightened leg action. Feeling into that area before creeping ourselves over to the other side. How does that feel? Moving the feet, acknowledging that we are, with bodies, we are allowed to adjust ourselves. Lovely. Before we come down onto our buttocks, onto our sit bones. So we find ourselves into Tadasana. Now keep the hip points grounded. How does that feel? Now we're going to take the left foot in to rock the baby. So you might want to bring the foot into the hand or the elbow. Keeping your spine nice and long. Rocking the baby. Lovely. And for some of us who may want to explore, if your knees are okay, be very cautious on the knees. So this isn't for everyone. You might want to rock the baby more like this. You might find that you can come into half lotus, but we're not holding anything. And then we're going to take that foot to the front of the hip point to find our Marikasana. So there's a sense of space in between the leg and the foot. And then we bring the hands forwards and see how it feels to maybe bring the hands behind the spine, or you might have the hands here. You're coming into a forward fold and you can adjust the position of the foot. It feels kind of scrunchy into the hip here. And then pointing those toes up towards the ceiling. Noticing what you notice. And then releasing the arms. and bring that leg down. Shake the legs out. Shake, 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 before bringing your rock the baby in. So acknowledging knees, keeping that position integral. So we're not creating pressure in the knee, we're feeling into the hips. So wherever you've got the foot, ensure that you can sense properly into the knee. Maybe for some of us, as long as knees are okay, a little bit of half lotus. And then place that foot in front of the hip point. And then as you're rowing yourself forwards, bring those arms back and clasp the hands to behind the spine. And if the hands don't come together, obviously working with that forward fold motion, so you can see it from parallel, spiraling up through toes. A little bit of a bind here, become a bit pretzel. Can you find any fluidity here within your hips? And then releasing the hand and bringing yourself upright. Bring those feet down and jiggle out the legs. And if the legs need some more jiggling, we can do that from our spines, shaking out the legs. Nice bit of trauma release, like jelly. Super. Now from here we're going to come into an inversion. Now if you have a wall space, for those of you who I spoke to at the beginning of the session, if you've got a wall space available, I'd like you to find your position with a blanket underneath the length of the body and the head against a wall. If you don't have a wall, that's absolutely fine. We can do this from a non-wall position. But if you imagine that I have a wall here, an imaginary wall, and I get hold of my blanket, and I use this padding for support around the shoulders and the head. And with my imaginary wall, so your buttocks are quite close into this wall, so you're almost like a Vipariti Karini. Now this might be okay for you unless you want to take it further. Contraindications for shoulder stands, hiatus hernia, something to be cautious with, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, migraines and head injuries. Now if you've got a wall in this position, your feet you're going to place against the wall space. So this is a lot easier to do in person. I've been doing imaginary props on my Wednesday class. Now I'm doing imaginary walls. Now with this action, we draw the feet down the wall space. And with that action, for those of you who have a wall, what happens, hopefully you have a sticky foot, what happens when you draw the feet down? The response within the pelvis is similar to our 2-foot support. The pelvis reaches off the ground and you bring yourself into a supported shoulder stand. So I'm going to come and have a look. You might find that you're in Vipariti Karini if you're not using a wall, or you can do your 2-foot support. So if you have a wall there, you put your feet against the wall and you drag the feet down. So socks off, dragging the feet down, that's it, loose, peeling the pelvis off the ground. And Amanda, I can see that you're there, and you can feel the hammocking, the softness around the front of the belly. Allow for that hammocking and softness to come in and work with the shoulder stand in a way that feels really fluid for you. So no forcing, no pushing. And indeed, if you're not using a wall, Ella, you can do your 2-foot support or you can do shoulder stand from the ground, depending on how you feel. So if you're doing it from the ground, you want to keep the head off the mat and you can feel into you're rolling the pelvis off the mat. So Ella, you might want to explore this as a wall is not available. Coming into your shoulder stand without a wall. But for those of us who are using a wall, it changes the shoulder stand completely because you've got that feedback. And indeed, if you want to lift one leg off the wall and lift up towards the ceiling, explore how that is, and then come to the other side. And if you wanted to take the leap from the wall, keep the hands behind the pelvis, the weight of the pelvis, and you can come into shoulder stand from there. Just ensure that the position is okay for you. And Julia, it looks like you're up against the wall now. So make sure the buttocks are up against the wall so the feet can be positioned. There's a dragging action as you lift. And you may want to spend a bit more time with that supported shoulder stand. It's really lovely to feel into the softness of the hammocking of the front of the belly that we attended to with the breath awareness. Feel into the hammocking around that region. And if you've already come out and you want to come into fish, do come into fish, your counter pose with the hands clasped beneath the buttocks, the legs straight in front of you, but ensuring that the head is not, well, it hasn't got any weight down into it. So you're lifting up through the elbows, come into fish. Now, if you're against the wall, you might want to begin to unravel the spine and come back to that beginning position with the feet. And then to come out of your wall space, bring your knees over to come out of the space and then come back to your mat. And after that supported shoulder stand, come into your fish, if that feels right for you, clasping the hands underneath the buttocks, straightening the legs, lifting up through elbows, and the head pops, but we're not taking any weight into the head at all. So we come into that very counter thoracic opening action. And then to come out, you unravel the arms, and we're going to make our way into Shavasana. So take your time as you come into your final relaxation. Absolutely coming into Apanasana, wind relieving pose, to come into flexion if the spine needs it. Using your blankets, creating support for the head. And you can use anything really. If you have a meditation cushion, that can work. And tuck yourselves in, making a little nest, using the bolster underneath the knees if you like to, especially if you want to open up the lower lumbar vertebra. That bolster will be really helpful for that. Coming into your relaxation. And you may, if you've got the bolster, want to explore bringing the soles of the feet together in a Baddha Konasana, butterfly. Or you can keep the feet wide and allow for the limbs to roll out of that center point of your body through the midline, that Sushumna, that channel. And coming back to that sense of observing the breath. Leaving the breath as it is. That process of discovery can begin to unfold. And coming back to that sense of pure awareness that we're developing within our yoga practice. If we can begin to treat our yoga like a meditation practice, and we're moving through the stages, through the 8 limbs, the ethics, the postures, the breath practices, the sense withdrawal, the concentrated or concentration of dharana, the absorption of dhyana, and of the merging with the absolute samadhi. I'm going to give you a few minutes to allow for that process to unfold, whatever process you're in today. Simply following the breath. You might find that the breath or the process of the breath has become more subtle as everything quietens down. Perhaps you can notice the sense of humming, the vibration of the body, awareness of the nervous system, the circulatory system. I often find when I move into these places that I can hear this vibration internally. Simply following the breath without any conscious intention, direction, or manipulation. Wherever you are with that sense of the interoceptive, those inner processes, begin to acknowledge the outer, perhaps the perception of sound. Perhaps you can hear birds where you are, or a sense of the hum of traffic. Whatever you can perceive, bring your attention out to the extremities, the fingers and the toes. And at the end of the following sound, I invite you to roll over onto either side in a fetal position. Finding the ground with your hands in your own time, coming up into an easy cross-legged position with the spine tall. And as you find yourself in an upright position, we'll close the practice, inhaling the arms up and overhead, following with the gaze, allowing for a little spinal extension to come in before bringing the hands down through the midline and allowing for that action to come down through into a flexion as you bow yourself forward, acknowledging the space in between. Namaste.